They, we're slightly overcast, so that might give us a little more of a chance to have them pop up, rather than if it were blaring sun, three-ish in the afternoon. They're going to want to be tucked away into the grass. So I think we'll go through the main field again, but then we'll go around Willow Pond area, and this is habitat for the snake. This is kind of its upland habitat. In the wintertime, then it goes down by the pond or Fleming Creek, which is east of us, which enters the Huron River. That will be that's habitat all along Fleming Creek in this portion. We have a fen in the south and a fen in the north. They're found in those areas, but they do work their way up here, and even in the field up here, we've had there's a melanistic version of the Massasauga, which is almost entirely black. You can hardly distinguish any of the markings on it, but distinctive tail and kind of the triangle-shaped head, and the eyes are slits rather than circular. And I always make sure that if you're not sure it's a Massasauga, then get really close to make sure that there's slits in there. That way you can be sure. But I'd like to avoid, did y'all see where that the ground nest was of the bird? Let's try to avoid that area, because I've had it where the bird that's the ground nest, big bill, woodcock, when the woodcock gets disturbed a couple of times in succession, I found that sometimes they will not enter their nest again. So let's steer clear of that area. But that is a good field, as we saw. We found a lot of different kinds of snakes. And if you do find a Massasauga, let's give a shout, and so that people, let's try not to rush in, but give it some space, and then with the hopes that people can kind of gently filter around in a circle to be able to observe that in the wild. And at the end of the day, do check yourself for ticks. I've had a couple of deer tick, embedded in my body. Always found Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, once there's no university thing other than urgent care, of course. So, but if you do find one embedded, you have 36, 48 hours to get the doxycycline 1 to 2 tablet antibiotic as a precaution for the Lyme disease. So the deer ticks are the ones that are about the size of a poppy seed, really small. If it's the bigger tick, even if they're embedded, I wouldn't even bother. Those you can pull out with tweezers, pull them straight up as close to the skin as possible. I have saved them in alcohol before, just to see if they could test it. But, check yourself, and so you have hours before they will actually embed. So you can do the preemptive kind of spraying of DEET, but just check yourself. Once you get home, make sure you're free of that. Very unlikely that the Lyme is here. But back into the snake. Any questions about how to approach this?
Are there rules for not handling this specific species of snake because of the MNFI status?
Yeah, you have to have a special handling permit and license to be able to handle species of concern, and it's typically a research license. A site manager might have some different, because he's managing the site and the habitat. He has special permission in theory. Yeah. I don't know if it's a special license or permit you have, but they have site managers that are dedicated to the habitats. Yeah. Might have to relocate an animal or move them around. That's different, but we can't just go pick them. Yeah. Nor should you try.
Yeah. So are ticks around year round now?
They start, probably in April or even March. I got my first one in March, I think. So yeah, they go throughout the season.
I've seen them in the warm winter days too.
Yeah.
It gets up near 40.
But yeah, if we have snakes in the building or in the children's garden, then I'll put them in a bucket and I'll just move them. You know, you don't want to move them too far, but you know, a couple hundred feet, just so it's out of harm's way, sort of. And yeah, that's in there. Interestingly, I have seen. We had a visitor have a picture of a Massasauga in the talons of a red-tailed hawk, and so they are predators of the snake, and they, you know, it was a pretty clear picture too. I was surprised, but clearly Massasauga adult in the talons of a hawk, and a couple of years ago there was a heavily damaged Massasauga dead, but kind of ripped open from the side, and the office manager came out and he said he saw a couple low flying hawks. I mean, it was literally like dropped out of the sky on the front steps, and so it was also, you know, the hawks. It's food for these other animals. So it's kind of a keystone species that controls a lot of voles in the area, but also providing food for other animals.
And so do the hawks. The hawks like the vole too.
Yeah.
They're competing reptiles, right?
Does Matthaei try to control the non-native species like the turkeys and stuff?
No, unfortunately we don't. University of Michigan does not allow hunting. I wish they allowed hunting here, you know, because you know lots of deer population here, and the turkeys I don't know.
It's not native to this area, is it?
Yeah, it was extirpated and reintroduced.
What was?
It was extirpated and then reintroduced.
Oh, okay.
So it's native. It was extirpated from the state, and then I think back in the 70s it was reintroduced.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yep, Baldwin.
Yeah, well, they find this place very suitable, of course. But yeah, my job primarily is kind of vegetation, you know, trying to remove invasives. We do prescribed burns, we do seed collection and propagation. We do prescribe burns here, but I only burn when it's below 50 degrees, because I know above 50 degrees you will likely have Massasauga habitat, Massasauga kind of activity. So we actually down there at the edge of the water, we have a monitor that measures surface temperature and also below ground temperature. And once there's this inversion in those two numbers, then we can expect to see Massasauga egress, which is kind of them coming out of their hibernacula, and then we'll want to limit our burns. And I won't burn near the wetland areas if it's you know, below 50 or above 50. But if I'm out here in these fields where I know that it's still early enough in the season and it's above 50, I will go ahead and burn that, because I know the snakes are still down at the water's edge, and they haven't made it up here yet.
That's oddly specific life cycle information you have to know to manage a habitat for one species, kind of. I mean, a lot of the reasoning is behind that one special concern species.
Yeah, and we've entered into, like in 2016, it was federally threatened. So it was a lot of work to get this federal acknowledgement that the snake is, you know, threatened. Before that, we had kind of a state species of concern. Michigan, we have we have the strongest population of Massasaugas of its entire 9-state range. It goes up into Ontario, but basically been extirpated from Wisconsin, Minnesota rather. There's populations of Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, New York, Pennsylvania.
It really comes back to the habitats.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at I don't know the figure for Michigan, but in Ohio, 91% of all wetlands have been converted to agricultural land, and it's not far away from that up here.
Yeah.
If we protect the wetlands,
Yeah.
we're protecting the thing.
Michigan is kind of like the last stronghold of the snake. It's found in like almost every county in the Lower Peninsula. whole island, but it has not, I don't know if it can't pay the toll to cross the bridge, but it's not in the UP. It's just in the LP here. I did have one of my interns swear that they saw a Massasauga in the Upper Peninsula, and I said it was probably a hognose. And I said, did you get a picture? No. So get a picture. If you're not sure, get a picture. We do, yeah, we do. I do have an app that is really handy. It's a Survey 123 app that you can take a picture, upload it. It'll geolocate the area, and you can enter information. You know, the date, how was it alive or dead? How big was it? And then we have a main database that has these over the years, and so it's really useful information. Those holes that were created originally by crayfish, and so they'll utilize those in the wintertime, and they'll come out once it's about 50 degrees, and even if it's like 50 degrees and change, they'll be a few meters from the hole, and then when it drops temperature that evening, they'll go back in. Now that it's, you know, consistently warmer, they're going to be in these upland sites that are, you know, this field up here with the Eurasian grasses, and further up the field, that's where they're going to find those meadow layers, and that's where they're going to find their meals. And then the life cycle, they're going to mate in August. But then they have the females store the sperm over winter, and fertilization actually occurs that spring. Development occurs throughout the season, and then they'll give birth at the end of the summer. And then so right around August, September, even into October, you're going to see a whole bunch of these tiny neonates with the tiny little button, and they will flick that, trying to make a noise, but they have just as much venom that I've seen, and it's sometimes thought that they can't regulate how much venom they bite, and so they can actually be a little more dangerous than an adult who might actually give you a dry bite, which is kind of a test, like a scare, and so they can be just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than an adult. And but it's end of the summer, so May, early part of June is when you're going to see the snake most, and then you won't see them throughout the year because it's hotter and the vegetation's taller, and then you're going to start to see them again, you know, at the end of the summer into the fall. Was there a question back there? Or
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you say the female gives birth in late summer?
Yes.
So the one that we saw earlier was born last
Yes.
year?
Yep.
Okay, and so they only give birth one time?
They give birth every other year.
Oh,
Because it's
wow.
it's also live birth. So
Okay.
It's
Takes a lot of energy.
it's taxing to the female. You know, it takes a lot of energy to produce, you know, a ready to go, you know, animal. And there's like 8 to 12 in a litter.
So that's maybe
On the, you know, the populations on the periphery that are could be experiencing some trouble, and invasive plants. You know, we have these buckthorn honeysuckles that are coming in, shading things out. If you're not managing that land, then that land will become less and less suitable. And so the snake really kind of needs that open, you know, we've seen that it needs to have that thermal regulation. And so you're going to need to clear that site. And if you have a snake in the area and you're just letting it go, you know, you need to get some work done in there. Otherwise, the snake is, especially if it's just like an isolated pocket, you know, population. In 5-10 years, you might not have that population again. It might just not have the habitat, suitable habitat.